What does it take to tell stories that influence how people feel about a brand and motivate them to take action? Today on Marketing Over Bourbon, we're sitting down with someone who's spent her career doing just that, Carole Munroe. I'm your host, Sheila Butler of Butler Marketing Group, and Carole is a communications, marketing, and content leader who's helped bring big brand stories to life at Disney, at Hilton, and now through her own firm, ComSense Gems. In today's conversation, we'll explore how to tell stories that move people, the relationship between marketing and communications, and how to approach inclusive storytelling to ensure audiences see themselves in the stories brands tell. So pour yourself a drink, settle in, and enjoy this inspiring conversation with Carole Munroe. Carole, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Cheers.
I'm so excited.
Cheers, cheers.
And cheers to you.
Mm-hmm. So tell people what you're sipping. You're sipping wine.
Yes, I'm sipping wine. We had the conversation earlier.
Right.
I'm not a bourbon drinker per se.
Fair enough.
However, I found a great cab that is
like aged in bourbon barrels, right?
In bourbon barrels.
Okay.
And it gives it such a smooth finish.
Okay.
So I'm true to bourbon.
Awesome. Exactly.
But also true to me with
Okay.
a nice cab.
So Jeff Larson turned me on to this one, which is, it's a Basil Hayden.
Oh, wow.
And it's been aged in cab barrels.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
the
see,
reverse.
we're doing a little bit of wine and bourbon.
I love that. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
That's
All right.
innovative.
So we're going to dive in.
Yes,
All right.
Let's do it.
Career journey, high level.
Okay.
So for people who may not know your story yet, walk us through your career at a high level and maybe a couple of turning points that really changed your career.
Okay. Happy to do that. Well, I started, I've been in PR most all my life. However, many people may not know that I actually started my career in news. My degree is in journalism from the University of Georgia. Go Dogs. I had to get that in. And after graduating, I'd studied investigative reporting. I wanted to just get out there and kill it and be a reporter and uncover great things as well as uncover personalities doing great feature stories. That took me to Kentucky, where I was first employed by an NPR, National Public Radio, affiliate in Bowling Green, Kentucky. And so when you hear that NPR and public broadcasting supports rural communities, I covered 2/3 of the state of Kentucky, and that included a lot of rural communities as well as fabulous towns such as Bowling Green, the home of Western Kentucky University, and Louisville and Lexington and all those great cities. Was very successful in news. Within a year, my reporting was being honored with awards from the Associated Press. And it really allowed me to get my feet into storytelling. And that was a game changer for me when I finally transferred over into the world of public relations. So after doing news for a while, made that leap into PR. My first PR job was actually for the University of Alabama. Wow. And I dug deeper there into television reporting on behalf of the university, and then made my way to the Walt Disney World Resort, where I had a long and fantastic career. Magical, absolutely describes it. I feel like one of the luckiest people in the world to have spent nearly 3 decades with Disney doing everything you could think of under the sun. And then topping that off with a stint at Hilton Worldwide, and eventually leading the brand communications team there, where we were responsible for the PR strategy for Hilton's list of 27 brands and growing. But I want to take you back to another game-changing moment for me that actually occurred while in college. And this was an internship that I was so fortunate to have with Coretta Scott King, who, as you know, is the widow of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And Mrs. King founded the King Center in Atlanta, Georgia. She liked my writing. I was helping out with PR, which was actually my very, very first stint in PR. That let me know I could do this later on, when it wasn't even in my head.
By the way, no
to
pressure.
be doing that. No
Just
pressure.
her.
No pressure. Just her. I got to write speeches for her that were actually broadcast on CNN. And I took her to those productions as well. So there I was, little Carole, driving Coretta Scott King, who at the time was one of the most influential women in the world, driving her around in my little college car that my parents bought me. And I remember thinking, this is really odd. I am driving history in my car.
Right.
But getting
Literally.
to see her as not only the leader of this world renowned organization, but a working mom to 4 children, and seeing those intimate moments. And, thinking back on my career, there were so many things that I experienced with Mrs. King that let me know later on, you can do this. You can be a mom. You can have the work-life balance. And the main thing is you can walk into rooms with dignitaries and feel like you deserve to be there, be confident about it, and have a seat at the table. Because she allowed me to do that side by side with her, as she has with so many other young people who she mentored along the way in just her normal life.
That's incredible. Incredible. I did not know these things.
Yeah,
Right.
and I'm in a new phase of my life where sharing these things in hopes that it will inspire young people and those who may not feel they have the confidence to do what they were meant to do. You do have it, and you can do it.
Amazing. Amazing. All right. So we're going to dive a little bit more into Coretta Scott King and the King Center. So when you served as a special assistant to her, what did you learn about message and legacy and audiences that still guides your work today?
Oh, very good question. And, part of my answer here is for those PR folks out there who might be working for nonprofits. And that's really, really hard work because you don't have the big budgets that many corporations might have. But what you do have is the legacy of the work that you're doing for the community. And that is such a strong and powerful message. So I did learn that at the King Center as well. And if you've studied any of the writings of Dr. King, and of course have seen his speeches that have inspired generations and will continue to, when I look at his speeches, I am so drawn to his ability to paint pictures with words. And it's been a lesson to me in writing for news or for public relations, instilling emotion, because that's the one thing that you have to motivate people to do what you want them to do. And that's one of the things we solve for in the public relations world.
Absolutely. And, I think that facts and data have a purpose in terms of backing up a story and legitimizing and saying but prove it or tell me why. But people remember the stories. They don't remember the facts and data.
Exactly. And going back to that idea of emotion, I'll have to tell you this full circle moment. Having worked with Mrs. King early in my career and as I mentioned, meeting all of her kids, well, full circle moment happened at Walt Disney World when her oldest son, Martin Luther King III, and family and friends call him Marty, brought his wife and daughter to Walt Disney World Resort. And this was right around the time that we were debuting Princess Tiana. And they got to meet Tiana and take photos with her. And I have to tell you, he was probably more excited than his little girl was at the time because of the legacy of that moment and what it meant.
Amazing. Amazing, amazing. Journalism and newsroom. So you graduated from the University of Georgia, as you mentioned, with a journalism degree, and you've worked in newspaper, radio, and TV. What did you take away from your newsroom years that teaches you about audiences and storytelling under pressure?
Under pressure, I will tell you that working in radio news in particular is a fantastic training ground for storytelling under pressure because I worked in an all news environment, which meant every hour we were on the air with the news. Now, every day and every hour doesn't necessarily give you a new news item, as you know, if you watch 24-hour news. So you've got to learn how to repackage that news and find a new angle very quickly throughout the day. I might have one major news story, And that story might have to carry me from 8 a.m. to at least noon, which means I've got to come up with 4 or 5 iterations of that story
Mhm.
because the idea is give the audience something that they don't already have.
Yeah.
And that has been very helpful in the PR world when you've got one thing to talk about, but you've got to figure out how do I parse this and tell a different story that will be relevant in a social media
Yeah.
setting, that will be more relevant to a reporter who I'm trying to give an exclusive to,
Yeah.
but I also need to hold enough of the story to share with other media, if you
Yeah.
will. And that's been a very helpful tool that has truly been a game changer.
Fascinating. Fascinating. Were you on like a high school or college radio station?
Well, that's so funny when you ask about high school. I wasn't on a high school radio station. My school didn't have a radio station at the time, but for whatever reason, the assistant principal of my high school decided to give me the job of making the morning announcements.
Oh, you were
So
the
that was
PA
so I
announcer?
was the PA announcer. So that was kind of my very first foray into broadcast news, if you will.
Right.
And I'd stand in the principal's office and with the microphone and do all of the announcements for the school. And I became a little popular because I'd slide in little jokes and little things that only the students knew, but went above the administration's head. And after giving the announcements, I'm walking to class, down the hall, and kids are going, "Oh, that was funny. That was cool." But my assistant principal never knew the inside jokes that I was sharing with the
That
rest of
is
the
so
with
funny.
the rest of the
Actually,
students.
I was on my high school radio station for 2 years, and Charlie Morgan was our teacher. That's his radio name. And years later, he was inducted into the Country Music Radio Hall of Fame kind of thing. Who knew?
Who knew?
Right?
Who
But
knew?
yeah, and who knew why we'd be doing a show like this? But I think that between my performing arts background and radio, I
Yep.
think it's funny. You learn these
You
things
learn these
and it
things.
never leaves you.
They never leave you.
Mhm.
So that's a shout out to parents as well as students who might be listening. That experience you're getting in high school, don't discount it because as we've
Yeah.
learned, it's all about the reps. And the more
Right.
reps you get, no matter where they come from,
Totally.
the better you'll be. And I did
Yeah.
write for the school newspaper staff and the
Yeah.
annual
Well, me
staff.
too. Yeah.
There we go.
It's funny, right?
Communicators.
Doesn't leave me, right? Yeah. Warren's one and only WEDM 91.1 FM. All right, there you go.
go.
Um, Broadcast alliances at Disney. So when you led broadcast alliances, you were working with networks and shows to feature Walt Disney World. What did that teach you about integrating brand into entertainment in a way that feels natural but still drives results?
Absolutely. Well, you can't talk about broadcast alliances without talking about the person that really created that. And I'm going to give Walt Disney credit for that because The Wonderful World of Disney was
Yeah.
all about promoting Disneyland
Exactly.
and using the television network to
Mhm.
do that. So he was the ultimate when it comes to a broadcast alliance. But that is really leaning into a brand like Disney that everyone loves and has a curiosity about, and finding the right partner and partnership opportunity to tell that story. And at the time, because this was when cable news was at its height and everybody was looking for content to fill, the various networks that were very specific in their programming. That takes you back to learning how to take one story and develop many different
Yeah.
angles from it. So when you think about the Food Network, the Travel Channel, decorating shows, of course, travel shows, there are so many different ways to tell a Disney story. And we were very successful in partnering with production companies such as Lightship Entertainment, owned by a friend of mine, Andy Perrott.
Mm.
And we created a whole series called The Secrets of Walt Disney World, Secrets of Disney Cruise Line, and so forth. And these were big primetime hits. And I think one of the best examples was when we partnered with Discovery networks for the opening of Disney's Animal Kingdom. And Discovery had within its umbrella of networks Animal Planet, as well as the Science Channel and others, which gave us, again, multiple ways to tell a Disney story. And we were able to partner with them and open up Expedition Everest with a 3-network special, which had never been done before. We basically created a roadblock across Animal Planet, the Discovery Channel, as well as the Science Channel at the time. I learned a lot from that, bringing partners in, collaborating upfront, understanding what's important to them as well as to us, and being able to give the partner something. We were getting a lot with all of the programming that was airing on the networks, and we had that conversation, with Discovery. What can we give them?
Right.
And one of the things we were able to do that was of value to them, but also added value to our guest experience, we created a boot camp, if you will, a base camp. I'm sorry, not a boot camp. That would have been quite valuable, but a base camp, thinking expedition base camp, at the entrance of Disney's Animal Kingdom. And with that very themed environment, we were able to incorporate some of the things that were important to the Discovery networks, keep the theming of Disney's Animal Kingdom intact, and give our guests an extra experience as they walked into the parks.
So, Carole, people may not know that we worked together a long time ago at Disney. So I was in the sister department, which was Synergy.
Yep.
And I was working on the Bourbon books, but when it was slow, because that was a whole 9-month cycle,
right,
I would job out into your team and do things like the Weddings of a Lifetime special to launch the Disney Cruise Line and showcase weddings on Castaway Cay. HGTV, I think was Rebecca's Garden or something was the show.
Yes.
Right? So we've worked together for a long time.
Absolutely.
And Ken Potrock was the VP, right?
Yes, he sure was.
Alliance Marketing.
He sure was heading up Alliance Marketing. Yes, so Synergy and Alliances work together very closely. In fact, we ended up joining together to become one big team, which was quite synergistic, pun well intended there. And, it was really cool because it made us think even more strategically about our Disney assets, as well as our opportunities to partner with third parties and bring value to the company.
Yeah, exactly.
We're taking a quick bourbon break. So while glasses are refilled, let's talk about something as important as a good pour, your marketing. I'm the founder of Butler Marketing Group, and we help businesses, small, medium, and Fortune 500, navigate growth and transformation with marketing that's strategic, intentional, and built to leave a legacy. Whether you need branding, marketing strategy, loyalty, or a fractional chief marketing officer, we've got the perfect blend of services for your business. Contact Butler MG to get started. Now, back to the show.
Let's stay on the Disney parks and storytelling for a minute. When you were director of public relations, you led communications for obviously the world's most recognizable destination, Walt Disney World. What did you learn about creating stories that motivate people to visit?
Well, one thing I learned early on, and this actually goes back to my news roots, is meeting people where they are with storytelling, finding relevance in your audience's everyday life. Because you can come up with a great idea, but if it doesn't have relevance in their life from either a timing perspective or a subject matter perspective, they're not going to listen. So news becomes news when you're telling someone what they need to know when they need to know it. And that's something I learned in the news business, and it served me very, very well in PR in how to be strategic with messaging. An example of that might be if we were thinking about how can we start to get folks thinking about spring break travel. And it's the dead of winter. And okay, it's the dead of winter. Half the country is covered in snow and ice. Why don't we, here's an example, invite weather anchors to do their weather forecasts from the Walt Disney World Resort.
Brilliant.
So that's one easy peasy way. But people don't think of that. And it's a great way to become relevant instantly, thinking about what folks are going through
Yeah.
in their everyday lives.
Yeah, exactly. I do a lot of work around customer journey mapping for clients.
Mhm.
And that really is what's the entire arc of the customer journey. And then what is the right message at the
Mhm.
right time and the right channel
Mhm.
that will lead them through to what you are trying to motivate them to do.
Exactly. Because you can have the right message, but if it's the wrong time for the message, it's not going to be effective.
Right.
Right message and at the right time.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
I'll tell you, Sheila, one of the things that really excited me about my public relations stint was when our team didn't have that shiny penny to talk about.
Mhm.
It's easy to promote when you have a brand new attraction that's
Yeah.
opening or a new theme park that's opening or, a celebrity visit. But what do you do when you think, wow, we don't have anything new to talk about?
Yeah.
And as I think about my Disney tenure, those were the most exciting times because we had to get in a room together and be really creative and do some brainstorming and figure out what's our message when we think we don't have anything,
Yeah.
but then we find out we had a wealth of things to talk about.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things we did when we created the campaign Coolest Summer Ever.
Very cool. I like it. I like it a lot. So I'm going to give you a quick second to sip on your wine.
Thank you.
Well, I thank our amazing sponsor, D3 Brewing Company. So they are the makers of Retired Brides, Binny's Brew, Three Wishes, etc. They are phenomenal. They understand the importance of creating connections and crafting something that is unforgettable. So whether you're toasting to a big idea, celebrating a small win, or just savoring a moment of inspiration, D3 Brewing Company has the perfect pour for every occasion. And with every sip, you're not just enjoying an excellent brew, you're part of a story around loyalty, fun, and bringing people together. So cheers to great beer, great conversations, and the magic of D3 Brewing Company. Drinks up. All right. Marketing versus communications. I think people get this so wrong. I don't know why it's misunderstood, but we're going to settle this today.
Okay.
So you've held roles spanning marketing, communications, content. So for the people who actually blur those things together, can you draw a distinction between marketing and communications, and how should the teams in those concepts work in concert?
Okay. Well, I love that you actually use the word blur because I'm going to lean into that. I think when it comes to marketing and communications, when you're actually activating, blurred is good because there are such tremendous opportunities when the marketing team and the communications team acts as one. Now, there is a difference between the two disciplines, but they are complementary. Of course, marketing is all about driving the sale, driving the sell, if you will. And communication has many facets to it, one of them being protecting the brand. So there's a crisis communications aspect to it. But it all boils down to whether you're protecting the brand or selling or promoting the brand, knowing who your publics are and managing the relationship that the organization has with its various publics. Because most companies and organizations have more than one public, and knowing who they all are is the role of communications and knowing how to speak to them in relevant ways. So when you think about launching a big campaign, having the communications team and the marketing team working together is really critical for success. I think one key role that the communications team provides is to basically set the table for the bigger sell message that marketing is going to come through with. So communication sets the relevance, gets out there first, starts to set the table, if you will, so that people are thinking, oh, wow, well, this looks pretty cool. This sounds really interesting. Oh, yeah, I do have some affinity to this brand. I like the way this table setting is coming. And then you come in with the marketing message that's repeated and kind of think of that as courses in a meal. Each course brings you something new to think about. And then, voila, you've consumed the message. You've had this great meal and you're motivated and energized to get out there and act on that call to action.
Yeah, that's a fantastic analogy. I've not heard that before. Brilliant.
And I just made that up. I wasn't sure where it was going, but I'll blame it on the wine.
Secret's out. Okay, there we go. So let's talk a little bit about Hilton brand communications and campaigns. So you led the communications for obviously a very broad portfolio of hotel brands and launched It Matters Where You Stay, as well as To New Memories. So what were the key insights behind those campaigns that inspired them, and what made them resonate with guests?
Really good question. This gives me an opportunity to just pay tribute to the fantastic team members and leaders at Hilton, because we all worked as a team to make this happen. And it was the communications team and the marketing team and the relationships we formed that made those two successful. One of the smart things that we did from an organizational standpoint was have our communication leaders, top communication leaders, sit on the marketing leadership team. So even though I was VP of comms, I also sat on the marketing leadership team. And that allowed for great synergistic conversations and planning. So let's start with Let the Memories Begin, because that was our pandemic campaign. How are we going to get out of the pandemic that closed the hotel industry, down to about 30% all over the world? Can't imagine, looking back on it. But what we did from a communication standpoint, and I want to give a big shout out to the Coin PR agency, who were our partners in that venture. Everyone had been shut up in their homes. We didn't know what people were thinking or how they were thinking about the future. Is life going to be different? Have our publics reprioritized things that are important to them? And by the way, where will travel fall in that foray? So we decided to ask, and we worked with a survey company that did a massive survey of the US, and then we also tailored it to our key markets around the world to find out just what people were thinking about travel. And we found that they were going to prioritize travel like never before because they missed it so much. And we identified this trend that said there was a travel memory deficit. Because think about it, we're all locked up in our homes. What do you have to talk about when you're with your friends? One of the things in normal life is travel. Everyone enjoys sharing travel memories, and we all were running a deficit. We didn't have that to talk about. And our consumers told us that they would continue to prioritize travel no matter the cost. And that was one of the earliest indicators that travel was going to come back gangbusters, and it did. And we were able to drive many, many headlines as a result of the survey and the survey results, which told us what Americans were thinking. And then we took that survey and applied it to key markets, EMEA, and on and on and on. And we allowed the regions to adapt the survey to the region, because they gave us feedback that, hey, some of these questions you're asking for your US audience may not work as well in Europe or Italy or Africa. We want to tweak it a bit. And we said, please do. And let's see what else we learned. And by doing that, we also came back with even fresher results that were kind of interesting from a comparative standpoint. The US audience says this, but here's what Europeans think. Here's what we're learning in the Middle East. And it was a huge success and a great way for the communications team, again, to set the table for that messaging that helped bring Hilton at the time out of the pandemic in a big way.
Yeah. Amazing. It's interesting because you and I have lived sort of parallel careers from time to time. So Disney, and I was at Choice Hotels at the time during the pandemic. So sort of down the pike, the turnpike. And when we were trying to figure out, how to approach it, they brought back the On the Road Again campaign, the Willie Nelson song. And it had been a campaign for years and years for Choice Hotels, and it had sunsetted. But realizing that when people were ready to get back on the road, they weren't flying, they were taking road trips.
Yeah.
And so focusing on that drive market, that sort of 3-hour radius, because people wanted to go somewhere, but they needed to be outside. And so the focus was on national parks, and visiting family again, et cetera, et cetera. That was a
great
very,
example.
very challenging
Great
time.
example, but of meeting people where they were.
Exactly.
And knowing what was important to them at the time. And of course, the message of safety.
Mhm.
There was a practical side and an emotional side. The practical side was that we had to convince our audiences that coming back to our hotels was safe.
Yeah.
And a partnership, going back to the importance of partnerships
Mhm.
with Lysol and the Mayo Clinic, helped prove that. So Hilton was the first to step out in that way, not only helping its business, but I think the hotel industry as a whole. And then that emotional side spoke to the desire to get back out there and travel.
Yeah, amazing. So you give a shout out to some of the leaders that you worked with there. I'm gonna bring one up because it's someone that you worked with at Disney.
Yeah.
So Craig Discern.
Yeah. Mhm.
Can you speak for a moment about what uh, what is the way that you've evolved your career in that you found these people that sort of you're going on their career journey and they're going on the career journey. Does it create an environment to where it feels more safe because of the fact that you know each other so well?
That's a really good question. And yes, thank you for giving that shout out to Craig because we became really good friends.
Yeah.
And that's kind of magical in and of itself because you never know if that's going to happen,
Yeah.
with a person. I think we would be friends if we were in totally different industries. But it worked out, I think, in part because we both came from a news background. So
Yeah.
we had that in common and could immediately speak that language. We also had a couple of other funny things in common. Craig is an alum of the same college that my husband attended, and their paths crossed while my husband was in grad school and Craig was in undergraduate school. We don't have enough time for me to tell that story, but it's a very, very funny story, and we laugh every time we think about that story. So we've had some personal touch points that just kind of made the friendship a natural one that developed, and I think we both brought complementary things
Yeah.
to our teams and our leadership style.
Yeah. It's nice when you get to work with an old
Yeah,
friend, right?
absolutely.
So we're going to stay on Hilton, but in a different lens. So content partnerships and brand storytelling, from reimagining Hilton's newsroom into stories from Hilton, I believe was the title, and other content work and partnership work, etc. What does good brand storytelling look like today when you're blending PR, content, entertainment?
Really good question. Good brand story should envelop all three and more whenever you
Naturally,
can,
right?
naturally. For those folks who think that, oh, well, I'm writing a story for print or it's going to be online. Well, guess what? You need some video with that. Why not? So all reporters are multi-purpose and multimedia,
Mhm.
and everybody's a reporter these days, as we know. If you've got a smartphone, you are a reporter. Some of the most amazing stories that have changed the trajectory of history in the past 10 years have been captured with a smartphone. So I say if you're telling a story, think about it in a very full 360 way. Think about the written word, making sure you get your facts straight. Think about how you could tell this story from a video perspective. And then also think about any sidebar stories that will allow you to revisit the main topic in a different way. And that's a great way for organizations to also highlight some of the key people on their team who often work in the background, but they are the real subject matter experts. Bring them to the foreground and occasionally make a story about them and the interesting things that they do because the public has a curiosity about that. We learned that from the secrets of Walt Disney World and the secrets of Disney Cruise Line and so forth. Secrets are good.
Yes, yes, indeed. So let's talk about your firm, right? So launching ComSense Gems. So as the founder and president, what kind of challenges do you see that clients are bringing to you? And then where do you start when you're trying to help them align the communications, content, and reputation?
And different companies are at different paths
Mhm.
and maturity when it comes to that question. So the first thing I try to do is a lot of listening so that I can understand where this company is in its communication journey and what its true goals are. Because oftentimes in the world of communications and content, it's very easy to say, okay, we need to do this, or we need this shiny penny, when maybe you don't need that. First thing you need to do is kind of let's step back and talk about what is it you're trying to solve for. And I love starting with why. I borrowed that from Simon Sinek after reading his book, and it's a game-changing question. Start with why, because that can help reveal the true essence of what the true problem is that a company is trying to solve. Yeah. And then we can start to build a plan, but let's spend some time knowing what the objectives are, and then we can work on strategies and tactics to get it done.
Exactly. I think that often people rush to what they think the solution should or could be,
right,
versus stepping back and saying the business objectives are XYZ, and therefore the objective of marketing and the objective of comms will associate back to that business objective.
Right.
And then you start to say, okay, now how do we want to activate this?
Yeah.
And I think that also not only why, but I asked probably 3 whys. Because you get the answer.
Yes.
And then you're like, but why that? And you're peeling back
why.
the onion.
Yes.
And by the time you get to the 3rd why, you're like, you're not even where you started.
Right. And absolutely. I think there is a bit of advice that suggests going even as deep as 5 to 7 whys to really get down to the essence of things.
Yeah, absolutely. Inclusive storytelling and representation. So across journalism, King Center, Disney, Hilton, and now you're on Firm, how do you think about inclusive storytelling and making sure audiences see themselves in the stories that brands tell?
Inclusive storytelling equals growth. That's how any organization or company is going to continue to grow its business, by inclusive storytelling, making sure that you're including everyone and thinking about, well, who might we be leaving out who has an affinity for our brand and wants to spend money with us. So it's been a game changer. And I think Disney has been just excellent with inclusive storytelling and continues to be for all the obvious reasons. And it's a reflection of life,
right,
and everyone around us. And to have the opportunity to tell a story, again, in many different ways, is really interesting, because that way you make sure that nothing's left on the table and we're bringing everyone along for the experience and the opportunity to experience different brands.
Yes. So we're going to wrap up. There are 4 standard questions. So the first one is, if your approach to public relations were bourbon, what bourbon would it be and why?
Well, I think I would stick with the 2 bourbons we're showcasing today.
The wine bourbon.
The wine bourbon.
Yeah.
The wine bourbon, because we've been talking about synergistic relationships. So to have a glass of Cabernet Sauvignon that comes out of a bourbon barrel and gives me that smoothness of bourbon without having to drink the bourbon. Right. That's innovation. Right. That is so darn creative. And then now to see the reverse done with the bourbon. Yeah. So I would recommend either of these to anyone, because it truly is the essence of creating a great alliance,
right,
doing something synergistically, and to top it off, being innovative.
Yeah.
With the simple things around you. So great storytelling and great content doesn't have to be complex. That's part of why I named my company Comm Sense. It's a play on common sense. That saying, if common sense were so common, then, why aren't people using it more? So I do intend to take a common sense approach with listening and being efficient in how we approach communications opportunities.
Excellent. So Disney question, this is one of my favorite questions. If you could go back and experience one thing at Disney for the first time ever, what would it be?
Wow. That's a tough one. I would have to say, and and it's an attraction that said its goodbye recently. But I would have to say Muppet Vision 3D because I love Jim Henson and the Muppets. Had an opportunity to meet him and work with him at the studios when we launched that attraction. It was one of the best news conferences of my entire career. Again, a creative moment that was spur of the moment, working with Jim and his team, and we were trying to think of how can we do something different for the media. And they said, hey, well, why don't we do a news conference? And it's the Muppets leading the news conference. So envision Hollywood squares with each of the squares holding one of the Muppets. And that's how we did that press conference. It was the funniest thing. It was fantastic. It's something that I'm sure any media who were there will never forget, and an unforgettable memory for me as well. But I love the Muppets, and I guess I'll have to watch them now because they're coming back on ABC. So I'll get my taste of the Muppets.
That sounds fantastic. That would totally be a big career highlight for me. I've dreamt of meeting a Muppet or a Sesame Street character. Like, show me a puppet and I'm in. So does that footage exist anywhere?
Oh, I'm sure it does.
Do you think?
Yes, I'm sure it does. Yes. Well, thank you. Let me know if you find it. We
Right.
should go on that venture together.
We should.
But I'm sure it's in the archives of press events videos that Disney still has, because it was just a beautiful, fantastic moment.
Amazing. All right. So a previous guest left this question, so I'm going to share it with you. This is from Theron Skis, who was a VP in Imagineering.
I know Theron.
Right, he's a good egg.
Yeah.
So how do you balance your life and your work, and what are some of the tools and support networks you use to do this?
Wow. Thanks, Theron. That's a really good question. Very thoughtful. One of the things I do is calendar everything that I possibly can, because there's so much going on now. And although we have many, many tools that make us productive, there's also a side of those tools that leads to overproductivity, which then can lead to mistakes and, just unfortunate mishaps. So I calendar everything. If it's not on my calendar, it doesn't exist. I'm telling you. So that's one of the things that I do. The other thing that helps, from a career perspective is the power of delegation. And especially when you're leading a team and you have the opportunity to allow someone else to lead a project, because that's how everyone learns. And you're there to support them, but give them the leadership role. So that's really important. Teamwork overall, just taking that team approach. And Sheila, as you know, Disney is a team culture. I have seen people not do well in their careers because they feel like they have to own everything and not share. But when you're working in a company as large as Disney, or any company for that matter, one of the key things is to think about the impact that your decisions have on other departments that you may not even come in contact with, but there is that domino effect of impact, and being able to bring the right people in early on so that you can see who truly is a stakeholder in your success is another way of managing things. And then being intentional about work-life balance and carving out family time, carving out time to recharge, and not feeling guilty that, hey, maybe I just don't want to do anything today. I really need to recharge my brain. I need some me time, and it's okay to claim that. Your family will thank you for it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know if work-life balance for me exists. I don't know if it really, I think I sort of feel like a teeter-totter, and I sort of over-index on one, and then I try to balance it out and over-index on the other one. But I think that's really, really hard. But I gave myself some grace years ago when I was in my executive MBA program and working full-time. And I just decided if I stop seeking balance and trying so hard to figure that out, it actually took a lot of pressure off.
Brilliant. Living in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Exactly.
if you're seeking, you're not living in the moment. And if you live in the moment, you will see all these blessings around you. You'll see, oh, that 15-minute nap in the afternoon is right there and I can do it.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so you get to pay this forward. What question would you like me to ask a future guest?
Well, I'm going to go back to the inspiration that I talked about early on, and that is the King family. And one of my favorite quotes from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and I'm going to paraphrase it, but the essence is that one of the most profound things that we all should be asking ourselves is, what are you doing for others? And that's my question.
Very good. Excellent. I can't wait to pass that on. So we're going to wrap this up. I'm so delighted that you've been here today. Thank you, Carole. Thank you for your friendship, for being a guest, for being just an inspiration. And I love the fact that you shared your insights today around brand storytelling and communications from your work at Disney and Hilton to even your current role with ComSense Gems. Your perspective on how to reach and connect with audiences is something that everyone can take from this show and apply, which is fantastic. So thank you. I also want to thank the Iron Pixel Studios team here on this amazing soundstage and this amazing crew behind me that you can't see, as well as our generous sponsor, D3 Brewing Company, the makers of these fine craft beers like Retired Brides, Three Wishes, Benny's Brew, and Midnight Pumpkin. And more coming. And so for everyone watching today, I hope that this conversation has offered you so much to think about, the relationship between marketing and communications, the power of intentional content, as well as how to drive inclusive stories where audiences see themselves. There's something for every business leader that they can take back from this episode today. And if you enjoyed it, please like, share, subscribe to Marketing Over Bourbon. And remember, the best ideas often come when you take a moment to savor something great. So drinks up, Kungaloosh. We'll see you next time. Cheers. Thank you so much for being here. How fun is this?
My pleasure. And thanks for inviting me to such a cozy set with such a fantastic crew.
You are very welcome. I want to hear this story next time. The Craig DeZern and your husband's story?
Yes.
Okay, next time you come back on the show,
Okay.
we'll share that.
Sounds good.